Hello and welcome to week 14 in the psychology of adulthood. And we're really coming down to the wire here, just a couple weeks of work left. So here we are in chapter 14, end of life, talking, we talk about the lifespan, talk about the adult aspect of the lifespan. Here we are talking about the end of life and just one more chapter after this next week. So I start off in this chapter talking about healthcare and dying, and uh, sort of the psychosocial financial aspects of dying. I've heard some statistics that we use about 80% of the dollars that are spent on our healthcare are spent during the last 5 years of our life. And so this can be an expensive, disruptive time, along with the psychological transitions into late life and ultimately the next step. Now, that next step idea really kind of comes to the fore here. I was actually having dinner with a friend of mine the other day, and we're the exact same age. We're 60 years old. And he was asking me if I think about dying often. And I said, I do. And um, I the conversation went for pretty long, and we eventually sort of worked out that the idea, what I ended up telling him was the idea is that whenever we're in a stage, we look to the next stage and we wonder. Or Western thinking is very future oriented. When you're in kindergarten, you're looking to first grade. When you're in elementary school, you're looking for junior high. When you're in junior high, you're looking for high school, college or work, college work. It just, by being future oriented, we're always looking at the next stage. And I caution my friend that in truth, our next stage is late life when we're still alive. And what's that going to be like when our physical abilities, both of us are very athletic, when our physical abilities are diminished, and that the beginning of loss of functioning in this, some of which we're experiencing now. Of course, when we're 60 years old. And then the specter of the next step of death. Now, I know without any uh, doubt at all that people in late life think of death a lot, because it is the next step. When you're in late life, the next one. It can also happen when your parents die. When your parents die, you're like, okay, let's back up a little bit. When your grandparents die, you're still a couple people removed from facing your own death. Traumatic, and it's horrible as well, but nonetheless, they pass away. When your parents die, the reality is you're the next generation to go. So there can be a thinking of that. There can be a sense of crisis, like we talked about in earlier chapters. As people my age, 60 years of, approaching right now, semi-retired, looking at fully retiring, thinking about the finances of that, my to-do list and how that changes, my involvement with family, and, where do my energies start to turn? Those kind of things. That's another crisis. And then, of course, the next stage being the last living stage, with ultimately ending in my death. So hopefully, hopefully I last into that late, nothing else comes along. Um, so these kinds of thoughts coming up during this period of time, and some of you younger than me, might be thinking about these things too, planning for those things financially, or you've had close calls, or people around you might be passing away, and all that stuff. And this all brings in this idea of what late life is, or people in late life, and you're kind of looking at where you're going. That I'm going to be there, and wonder what that's like. And so with all of that within the healthcare system and stuff, there's some things that I always like to include that I learned about early in my social work career, and that was having to do with things like hospice and advanced directives. And this could be, hospice is a service that comes along when your care has moved from curative, or trying to cure what's ailing you, to palliative, which are trying to make you comfortable as the disease process, whatever it is going to take you out. So hospice has a sort of specter quality to it. I just very recently went through a process where a friend of mine, way younger than me, went onto hospice and she passed away from cancer. And that was kind of freaky. When I first heard she was on hospice, it was like, I don't associate hospice with people that age, but of course they are. So hospice services provide supportive services for the family and for the person who's dying around the fact that the person is dying, and help them to have what we would call a good death, one that's surrounded by family, confident that things are okay, that people will be okay, financially things are taken care of. Ultimately, the goal being that the person is not stressed or in pain, and the family feels supported as they're going through what perhaps might be the worst pain that they're ever going to feel. Advanced directives is a notion within our medical community that allows an individual to determine ahead of time certain decisions about their health care should they become unable to answer questions. And most of this deals with extensive procedures to keep you alive when a lot of your systems might be shutting down. And many people write up advanced directives to tell their family and to tell their medical team that they don't want to be tube fed, that they don't want to be, heroic measures to keep them, I've had a good life, let me go, and all those things. Now, these are tricky legal documents. And I say that because, for one, your doctor can't be the person who makes that decision. They have to turn to a family member. Remember, you're not aware. You are unconscious. If you're conscious, you can make those decisions yourself, and often people do. When you're unconscious, the doctor has to turn to a family member. Now, regardless of whether you have advanced directives or not, regardless of whether everybody knows what you want, all it takes is one family member to say, nope, I don't want Mark to go yet, I'm not done, and the doctor must go by that person's wishes. That's just the way it is. And so advanced directives do communicate to everybody around you, but all those people, when you're in the moment of informing them of your advanced directives, are not facing your imminent end. So therefore, how they act when that actually comes about might be surprising. And I have been involved in a number of cases where individuals couldn't agree to pull the plug on mom, and it created quite a problem, particularly among those who were ready, not liking it any more than that person did, but this is what mom wanted, and that person's no, and it just created a nightmare. As I was a social worker, I would often recommend that individuals establish a related document called a durable power of medical attorney. Now, those documents, which often accompany the documents that you can get for advanced directives, what those do is they identify an individual. Can't be your doctor. They identify an individual in your life, doesn't matter who it is, and that is the person who has the responsibility for making those decisions. That clarifies what that is going to happen. Now, that individual may change their mind too. Doesn't matter what you wrote out. You may say, I don't want to go eat tube fed, and the individual with the durable power of attorney can say, you are tube fed. The problems that can come from that, obviously, are that individual, should they be going against the wishes of other caring and other family members and friends, could be demonized. So that individual needs to understand. You don't do that They have to sign on it. So you don't do that, then like don't tell them. They have to be willing participants in that. Now, snuck in the middle there is the medical power of attorney. Now, this is a tricky one because a medical power of attorney, if I'm in the hospital and I sign a medical power of attorney for my wife to be able to be informed and be involved in all the decisions to my health care, technically speaking, if I become unable to make decisions on my own, that power of attorney becomes null and void, technically speaking. Of course, that's not reality. Reality is if somebody is in that position and my wife comes in and I've lost consciousness, of course they're going to exercise the power of attorney and allow her to have information and whatnot. It gets a little weird for a couple of reasons. There might be individuals who are sick and someone who has power of attorney is trying to manage their care, not necessarily in their wishes, which they have no legal right to do, but it's, you know, if it's the only family member involved, it's a little dicey. It's also rough on caregivers and medical personnel who have individuals who come in thinking that the power of attorney gives them a lot more power than they thought. And that gets worked out on a case by case basis. But power of attorney, the durable power of attorney is different. Durable means no matter how conscious or whatever you are, I can make, if you lose consciousness, the power of attorney continues. A regular power of attorney, technically speaking, is null and void as soon as you become unable to make your own decisions. And of course, the advanced directives are simply, this is what I would like. I hope you agree when the time comes. And that's how those documents work. So we see from the perspective of this late life, there's the individual going through late life, but there's other people going through your late life too. Like I was talking at the beginning of this lecture, you have caregivers, your children, your grandchildren or whatever, and your friends and whatnot that are also going through stages of grieving related to your process. But then there's ways in which we experience loss and death. If we, God forbid, lose a child, when we lose our parents, when we lose a pet, when we lose, those kinds of things. Each one of those is an experience of the death and dying process, which is a fascinating process in itself. In the next edition of this book, this course book, I'm going to go a little bit more into that, the Kubler-Ross stuff and death and dying and whatnot, enrich this chapter a little bit more on the death and dying part. That's certainly research that you can do. Now, in addition, because I'm into culture and its influence, there's also cultural values and norms and expectations to what happens when somebody dies. So in the case of my friend, she passed away and she was cremated, and there was a church service, and then it was a church service at a funeral home, and then there was a get together afterwards where people were able to talk with each other and whatnot, and that's a mourning ritual. So there was people from her life that people didn't know. I met people who were part of the group that she used to do water aerobics with. They actually, tell the truth, they did a swimming routine in honor of her, and it was moving. It was really pretty amazing, actually. People that were she was important to them, and they were important to her, and half the people in the room didn't even know these people who they were. And but that ritual, the process of what you do with the body, are there religious events that have to happen, and then how do people commune after that to share their grieving, to share the burden of grief? And different cultures, of course, do these in different ways. And the, at KV, there used to be, I think there still is, a death and dying class. And I've written a course book on death and dying. And the variety of death and dying processes that are around the world is mind-boggling. Some of which are startlingly amazing healing processes, and others maybe even a little disturbing to our Western thinking. Now, that brings us to the chapter 14 assignment. And in my developmental psych class and in this class, for a very long time, I've had the assignment that's in front of you, which is to write your obituary and then to reflect upon the people and the goals that you had, and and whatnot. And really kind of the purpose of that is not to get morbid, but to kind of push my philosophy of being in the moment and making sure that you spend time with your loved ones and prioritize people around you as much as you're prioritizing other goals and whatnot, and making sure that every day is lived in a way, not tactically speaking. If today was my last day, I wouldn't be making this video. But that you live every day as if, you don't have very many days left. You never know. And so, so that was kind of the purpose of doing that assignment. And over the years, particularly when I started doing this class at UMA, I would hear feedback from the students saying, this is about the fifth one that I do. So it's happening in other classes. And I thought, well, I still think it's a good assignment, but if you've already done it a bunch of times, then the learning is not as rich. So I'm going to commit. So the next version of this, I'm working on the next version of this course book, and the next version is going to have an alternative assignment. That assignment is to do a research presentation. So that's a slideshow. No narration for now because I haven't really flushed this all out. But you do a slideshow, and that slideshow with lecture notes embedded in the notes pages about a specific culture and its death and dying rituals. Could be Catholic, could be Jewish, could be South African, it could be British, could be Japanese, it could be Filipino, sorry. Any one of those. Just pick one, do the research on it, put imagery, and just research the death and dying processes involved in that. It mirrors, actually, in my developmental psych class, one of the first assignments in my developmental psych class is we look at cultural differences in birthing. Kind of doing the same thing at the other end of the class, looking at ways in which different cultures go about the death and dying process. So, so you are free without any more guidance than that. I haven't developed a rubric or anything like that yet. With no more guidance than that, you are free to do a slideshow on a culture and its death and dying practices, nice and professional with references and everything. It's almost like a research paper in a slideshow format. In lieu of the current assignment, which is the obituary assignment. So that's up to you. I think this will also indicate to me how many people actually watch this video. So, so we'll see. And so that's where we are. That's the chapter. The other thing that's going on, the final assignment, the planning to age well assignment, is also due this week. So I am hoping that you've been working on that. I know that some people have sent me some questions about it, so I know they're working on it. But that final assignment, it's outlined at the back of the course book, is also due at the end of this week. So kind of a big week. There's just an assignment and an assignment for this week. But certainly something that can be done within this week. No discussions this week. Right? Yep, no discussions. Or maybe there is a discussion. I don't know. I don't have a discussion written down. No, there isn't, because there's a discussion in the revised. Sorry about that. I do know that I went to add that today, and then I took it back because it's not in your course book. So there's no discussion. The discussion was going to be on advanced directives. That will be in the next edition of this course. But you won't see that because you're going to pass this course and you won't have to take it again. So that's it for chapter 14, just the assignment. Whichever one you want to do. If you want to do the obituary, go ahead and follow what's in the course book. If you want to do a presentation on another culture of death and dying practices, go ahead and do that, and I'm sure you will be fine. And then also the big final assignment: how to age well. Your plans on how you're going to do that, and please review the instructions in detail that are available at the back of the course book. So have a great week. I will look forward to your assignments, and take care.